Time now to get the latest trends in dive retailing, travel, and training with Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Now, here's your host, Scuba Radio's Greg the Dive Master.
That is me. I am Greg the Dive Master from Scuba Radio. You can check it out every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern, around the world. We broadcast our weekly talk show, but this is a special podcast that we do for Scuba Diving Magazine with our buddy Willie Cline and his son, Britton. We got them both with us right now. Willie, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, doing fabulous. A little hot here in Texas, but just for clarity, because we don't have any trademark violations, it's Scuba Diving Industry Magazine.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry about that. The nice folks out at Patty.
Well, that was my first mistake. It won't be the last, trust me. You know,
it's okay.
It's just how I roll. Right. But we got young kids like Britton to keep us in line, right, Britton? You're going to keep these old farts in line and focused, I guess, a little bit more. What do you think?
You're muted, Britton.
Oh, yeah, unmute. Now, see?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. See, he's supposed to keep us in line, and lo and behold.
I'll do my best.
Oh, geez. We're in for it, but that's okay. No, what do you think, Britton? You'll be able to help us out today, right?
Absolutely. And I actually had a little thing that I wanted to just kind of shout out real quick here in the beginning. For those of you planning to attend the DEMA Show, November 19th through the 20th in Las Vegas, it's going to be an amazing event. We got some really, really exciting things we're rolling out for the attendees. But first of all, we're participating in DEMA's Undersea Grand Prix, which is a fun and interactive activity where attendees complete a map by visiting marked exhibitor booths for a chance to win some really, really cool prizes.
Yes.
So come see us. We're going to be at booth 8075. We'll validate your map, and we'd love to see you. Secondly, all of our riders are going to be at DEMA's Resource Center on the show floor from Tuesday from 4 to 4:45.
No, we haven't told them yet, but go ahead, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry about that. They're going to be discussing our top stories from 2024, similar to what we're doing right now here on the Level Up podcast. So we're really hoping that you join in there with us. But lastly, if you're an exhibitor, DEMA's only 110 days away. And we have some pretty great pre-DEMA advertising as well as marketing opportunities available to help announce your show specials and get the hype going to drive foot traffic to your booth.
Love it.
So please reach out to me. I'd love to chat about how we can make this show the most successful yet. And Greg, that's all I got for you for now.
Well, what about a jumpsuit? If you participate in that thing where you got to get your tickets stamped around the show floor like a race.
Oh, like a sack race.
No, like I want one of them jumpsuits that the racers are wearing. Shouldn't we?
The zip up.
Oh, yeah, that's a cool idea.
Right.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'll never happen. But look, hey, we gotta have fun. That's what DEMA's all about. Not just networking and making the best of your business, but just having a blast with your dive industry friends. Which is
Greg. Let me ask you: who of our writers here are planning to be at the DEMA show?
All of them, good. I think.
Good.
Yeah,
good. That's
much.
important. Good. Okay. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, it's where everybody goes, and it's in Vegas this year. I mean, yeah. And we got that Formula One race at the end of the thing. If you want to tag that on for some fun and frolic in Vegas, God knows you don't need any extra distractions in Vegas, but we definitely got one this year that'll make things fun. But I love DEMA no matter where it is, but it is extra fun in Las Vegas for sure. And we got that race theme. And all the folks from Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, you want to meet some of the writers like we're talking to today, that'll be your opportunity to, get a little FaceTime with them. But today, we're going to focus on, well, which issue? What is the issue we're going to be discussing?
This is the July issue, and the front cover shot, I have to say something because it's absolutely spectacular. It's shot by Dr. Terry Cummins' wife, and she supplied this beautiful cover image, and it was, I'm going to tell you where, I know it was on a Mike Ball expedition, I think, but Kathy Cummins is her name. It was in Cairns, is that right? How you say it, Terry? Cairns?
Cairns? Yeah.
Cairns?
Australia.
Yeah, far north Australia. So it's a beautiful
they
shot.
say it like, they do
right
say
there,
it like Cairns, right? Cairns? Is that how they say it, Terry? See, I've been there once. So
beautiful, healthy reef. Not to segue to on the other side of the planet, which is our next writer happens to be.
That's right, which is Jen Adams from Little Cayman. And you will find her article on page 28 in this July issue, The Secret of Upselling Dive Equipment. So the question for you, Jen, is what do you mean what do you mean by sell with your wallet? I know that was one of the topics in the article. What can you tell us?
So what that means is when employees base their recommendations on the amount of money that they have in their own bank account or wallet, the attitude is, I wouldn't pay that, so of course you shouldn't. And it's a very restrictive way to talk to customers, because when you make assumptions based on what they can afford or what they're willing to pay, you are cutting your own sales. And so my method, or the way I train my staff, is to talk about the features and benefits of all the regs equally, or whatever the gear is, and allow the customer to make the decision based on their wallet and their diving needs. And that just kind of helps with the higher ticket sales. Sometimes it's hard because we want people working in the shop who are affiliated with diving, preferably dive professionals, but at least divers. And so that doesn't always necessarily equate to a background in sales. And so trying to get them in that mindset of how to talk to people about gear and educating them versus hard sales so that they can make the decision that works best for them.
Gotcha. I mean, basically you're saying let the customer set the budget, right?
Yeah.
They know what their budget is. And, and if I walked into a dive shop there in Little Cayman and saw Jen, we'd chat it up, and then she'd say, which level regulator you wanted? And I was like, well, obviously I want the most expensive one because I'm going to use my friend's wallet and see if I can con him into paying for it. But that's
great.
Ideally. My dive shop's actually located in Texas. I'm just here on vacation.
Oh, that's what it is. Well, golly, life is good for Jen today then.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna read one sentence from her article, which I find fascinating. And she's talking about, in the discussion of her article, about how that some customers they upgrade later. They might start cheap and upgrade later, and yet that's not necessarily what they want, but that's what the person selling them was doing. Somebody's got a mic open, so maybe make sure that we...
hey, Peter, I think your mic's... Is it Peter? Let's find out.
Somebody's going to open mic. So Mike, maybe, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to quote. It says, on several occasions, I've had a customer come back upset because they've been told about other options. They would have most likely, if they had been told about other options, they had more likely selected a more expensive regulator than the option of starting cheap and upgrading later. I thought that was really insightful. I used to work in a dive shop, and you're right. We tend to sell with what we think we can afford, not necessarily what a customer is affording, right, Jen?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's because we look at them and make an assumption. Other times it's because we're thinking about what we would be willing to pay as a new diver. But that's usually not the case. There's a lot of people out there who are kind of the pay once, hurt once kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And when you allow the customer to make the decision and give them all the information, then they feel more confident in their purchase, and they feel more like they have a more trusted relationship with you, so that when they come back later to ask for advice. And sometimes you give them all the information and they make the decision to go with the lower end items. And then they come back. I had one guy who came in with his head down after I told him all of the features of a swiveling turret and why it's a good thing to have. And then he came back a year later and said, okay, I got into side mount diving. I need a different regulator.
Well, that happens. No doubt. But yeah, listen to your customer, let them set the budget, and, put them in control. That makes them feel better and more comfortable. That makes good sense. Jen, is the weather good in Cayman today?
Yes, it's beautiful.
So we need to finish you up so you can get out there and enjoy it underwater, because I know they got great diving there at Little Cayman. So we'll let you do just that. But thanks for the info. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Up next, it's time to go down under, right, Willie?
We're headed the other side of the planet.
Cairns, Australia. I said it right? I learned a little bit at the beginning, didn't I, Terry? Or did I?
No, that's really good and a lot better than your knife jokes last time.
Well, hey, jokes, that's a strong word to use. when it comes to things for me, but I'll take it regardless. But yeah, you're in Australia, and you wrote for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine on how climate change impacts the dive industry. So how are the reefs in Australia, and especially how have they fared compared to the recent climate changes that we're seeing? Like, it's super hot in Florida and Texas right now. What is it like there in Australia?
Well, it's a really interesting subject because at the kind of media face, there's all sorts of stories about, the reefs dying, and, on the other side, it's still wonderful. It's really interesting off Cairns or in the Great Barrier Reef generally. We've got the highest coral cover we've had in years. However, when you dig a bit deeper into it, some of the species are certainly threatened by increases in temperature. And even some of the marine creatures are starting to move around a little bit. We're actually getting, especially the smaller animals down here in Cairns that we usually find much further north. But overall, I think, we all agree that we're pretty much got a problem out there at the moment in reefs all around the world. So the article I put together really spoke to the article before, where we looked at the major impacts that can hurt the dive industry. And we looked at 6 factors. But when you narrow it down to environment and climate change, it's really, really interesting what the outcomes can be. When you look at how much money is spent in just setting up a dive business and then have that overall threat hanging over their head into the future, it's something that we all should be considering in terms of how we operate, and even looking at basically alternative products for when certain things may happen that we have no control over. So that's kind of the essence of the article. We look at those 6 factors and see how they all integrate, and I put it into a model so that it's a little bit more simple for everyone to understand how they all interact with each other.
Right. And I would assume maybe are there a few tips on there on how to, make things better too, or just how to leverage, bright spots maybe, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure Professor Alex Brilski would jump in here because I've just read some of his Facebook page articles, and I think that this planting of coral is really questionable as an alternative. One of the things we've been finding here is that the coral species that they plant, and a lot of dive operators are actually, and you've got to bless them for doing it, are planting corals, but those species are ones that actually grow real quickly. And if you're into marine biology, you find the corals battle each other for space. And so if you plant too many of those fast-growing corals, that can actually change the whole nature of the reef. So we're not sure that planting corals is certainly the total answer, but it's part of the answer.
Yeah. Well, multi-pronged approach is what we probably have.
Got a thumbs up from Dr. Alex on that one.
Yep, I see that. And we're going to get to Alex Brilski here in just a bit, talk about shark diving. But as far as that article and, about the climate change and, the diving in Australia, I mean, that's good stuff. And you'll find that in the July issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. We appreciate the info there, Terry. Good stuff as always, despite the fact that you're not a fan of my jokes. But they're not jokes. They're observations. That's what I always tell people.
I got to say this, though, Dr. Terry, I really appreciate the meatiness of your articles. It's not everybody in the world will spend the time to really dive into what you're saying, but you really, truly are hitting things that are important to be said. And if you're a tourism board out there or you're an NGO, you got to read everything he writes, just like Dr. Brilski stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Moving on to our next speaker. From the July issue. We got Peter Symes on. Peter, he's an old friend, and I think we got him. Peter, you with us? Talk to me, Peter. He's been in and out.
He's in Denmark, and it might be past happy hour there.
Do we got to speak in a different type of accent?
Oh, there he is.
Talk to us, Peter. How are you, buddy? Are you there? I think his mic might be muted. I'm looking. Where is it? I can't see. There we go.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
There it is. All right, now we got him.
All right.
Well, welcome from Denmark there, Peter. How are you, my friend? Long time no see.
All good.
Yeah,
it has been.
Denmark is where he's located, And so it was only appropriate that they do an article in Scuba Diving Industry Magazine on about diving in Europe, which is what you specialize in. So what can we expect to read about in that particular article there, Peter?
Well, just to sort of reframe or rephrase the frame of reference, I think it all started by an observation I made a couple of years ago after spending almost 3 decades in the scuba industry. As a DEMA regular, I have a lot of US contributors, and we spoke about different travel destinations, and I casually asked some of our regulars who traveled across the Atlantic to have a layover in Europe to go onwards to, say, the Red Sea, the Seychelles, the Maldives, or somewhere in Asia.
Right.
Whether you have ever considered just going half the distance, stopping in Europe to dive in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was usually greeting with a quizzical look, like, wait, can you dive in Europe? I was like, yeah, duh. You should really consider it, since you are venturing further and further afield to find some new adventures.
Sure.
Granted, there are a few places on the planet that can compete with the lush coral reef and the coral triangle or Raja Ampat. But once we have sort of saturated our desire for that kind of diving, or we have run out of funds to do these exotic long-distance trips, there are a lot of options that's much, much closer. As I have discussed with some of, in particular, my U.S. colleagues on the U.S. East Coast, if you fly to Western Europe, or like the Azores or Madeira or something,
mm-hmm.
it's closer than flying from the northern end of the USA, Washington State, to Costa Rica or any of those places. So
take advantage of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
I began to sort of highlight some of the options in Europe and some of the benefits. And the main gist of the series is diving in Europe is very, very diverse, because you have everything from northern Scandinavia, where you have landscapes and archipelago that's a little bit akin to what you know from Alaska or the Pacific Northwest, down to the Mediterranean, which is Latin, of course, and you got everything in between. But since Europe is such an old continent, at least culturally and historically, it will be a mistake, at least that's my opinion, if you come here to any country, really, just go diving. Because there's so much more to experience in terms of history, culture, cuisine, and all the rest of it. And there are very, very good diving spots in certain countries and locations.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, none of it would really compete with the Far East. But if you have the desire or interest in trying something different, I mean, Europe comprises like 42, 44 countries, and there's seas, oceans, there's the Mediterranean, obviously, there's the Baltic, there's the North Sea, there's the Atlantic, and there's even inland diving that's pretty good if you go to countries like Switzerland and Austria that have some really nice mountain lakes.
Well, there you go. Variety is the spice of the diving life, isn't it, Peter? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you where this concept came from, if I don't mind, Peter, just for a second. We were talking a couple of months ago about this whole idea, and I said, you know, you have done some fantastic articles in X-Ray Magazine, by the way, which is free to consumers. Mm-hmm. It's a great magazine. Everybody should subscribe to it. But he had some great articles, and I think one of them was on southern Italy, Sicily, or someplace like that you had written about, and it was spectacular underwater photography. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, imagine a dive shop selling a trip to Sicily or to Sorrento or to any of the, you know, Mallorca, any of these famous destinations. I mean, my gosh, you'd have no problem selling out the entire trip, because the wife say, honey, do you want to go on a dive trip to Rome? Well, sure.
Yeah,
So
I'm going shopping.
That's kind of where this all started. And you're going to do a series on it for us. So over the next few months, he's going to be unveiling different places that are really great for that.
Yeah. What I'm going to focus on are destinations that are fairly easy to get to from the US. I would just assume that people are flying out of New York, just not to complicate matters, because that is a major gateway. And you can fly from New York to a lot of European hubs, from where you can get to a dive location with a short transfer. You can fly to Lisbon and dive like 30 miles outside Lisbon. Great diving there. You can go to Barcelona. You can go to Costa Brava. As you said, William, you can go to Italy. You can go to Rome. You can dive off Tuscany within a short, essentially a short drive. It's just a different beast, because you don't go to, like when you go to the Philippines, you will land in an airport and you get a transfer, you go to a resort, everything is in place. The main difference is here, you usually have to figure out your own flights and rent a car and book a hotel. But it's not very complicated, because you do a lot of this online stuff anyway.
Right. And it's good to break up that travel.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
Good stuff. Yeah. So that's in the latest issue. Good stuff, Peter. Get back to, having pizza
happy hour
on your surface interval in Sicily or something. I don't know.
Great.
That'd be great. All right. Next up, it is time for Pat Hammer, who's he's on his surface interval for a dive class, I think, in Chicago. Is that right, Pat? How you doing?
I am. I sent him out to lunch so I could join the party here.
Okay. Well, so not only that, he's hungry. So we better find out what he's been up to. So
I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So you wrote for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, the July issue, and you have an extensive career in dive instruction, just like you're doing today. That's no. You do this all the time. I mean, you're one of. Pat's probably taught more classes than anyone I know. Don't you have some kind of like record with Patty or something?
I think so, yeah.
It's insane. So that's what you're talking about in the latest issue, as far as instruction. Why teach specialties? That's what the article is about, right? So is the article about how to make money from teaching specialties, or what exactly, Pat?
Well,
actually, I'm looking to try to keep. Go on.
I'm just going to interject for 2 seconds, because this isn't an agency-specific question. This is a man that has spent his entire life, and is probably the most prolific instructor trainer that I'm aware of on the planet, has stayed busy year in, year out. And it occurred to me about 2 or 3 months ago, we were chatting, and I said, how the heck do you continue to do this? And you said something about doing specialties. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so that's what really the kernel for this idea was, how he utilizes this as a way of keeping people very engaged. So sorry, I just setting it up for you, Pat.
Yeah.
That's perfect. No, all agencies have specialties, and the instructors have to do specialties. Otherwise, they lose the enthusiasm. And that's what's kept me going for over 50 years. I get excited. I go on a wreck dive one day, then I'm out doing a fish ID. And it's not the money as much as just getting out, enjoying what you do, and the enthusiasm I can pass along to my students. And they get really excited because they get to go do a buoyancy class with me, or they get to go do a photo class with me. And I think that's what's going to keep a lot of dive instructors going too. Get the enthusiasm going, let your students see that. And I think that'll help them out a lot. And I do enjoy teaching all different specialties.
Now, do you get more creative with some of these specialties too, Pat? Because, now they have mermaid specialties, basket weaving, all kinds of crazy.
I could beat that. I got that beat. That beat. We run trips out of West Palm.
Yeah.
And we take people down there for open water dives, and we do Blue Heron Bridge on Thursday and Friday. We go out and get food on Saturday, and we do the gourmet diver specialty Saturday night. We even show how to pair the wine with the lobsters we get.
Yes. Well, that's just one more way to keep it fresh for the instructor too. You pick up one of these cool and specialties that people have gotten quite creative with some of them. And I know a lot of them, like that mermaid specialty. By the way, I mean I know some instructors that are making big money doing that.
I do too, but I didn't look so good in the suit, so I let that one go.
That's good.
You can threaten them. Like, look, if you don't take my class, this is what you're going to see.
A fun fact. using your pool and repurposing it for other income producing ideas. And the mermaid came up. So I did a little research on this mermaid program, right? I came across a lady on YouTube that teaches people how to mermaid that has more views than the Tonight Show has received in a year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Right.
I did the math. I couldn't believe it. And those tens and tens and tens of millions of eyeballs. It's just the popularity is unbelievable.
Well, we've been doing Scuba Radio for 27 years, and I learned very early on, and I think all of you can back me up. We broadcast from the dive shows, from DEMA and stuff, and I learned this very early on that when we went out into the public eye, they sure as hell did not want to see some old radio guy. But you have a few mermaids with you, that is marketing gold. You hear what I'm saying?
They're brilliant.
And they're like bait. You put them out there, and it brings in the crowds and the kids and everything, and then you suck them into the dive industry. So
the water with that.
Beautiful.
It's worked out pretty good,
Thanks, Pat, for being on. It's great to hear your perspective on things.
Yes.
Hey, I appreciate it. And I like sharing the excitement and enthusiasm I have with everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's infectious. And folks like Pat Hammer you've done such great work for the industry, Pat. Hats off to you, my friend. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep up the good work. And he continues to do it. Just like our next guest here, Willie, Alex Brilski. He basically wrote the book of diving.
Literally.
Yes.
Literally.
Recreational encyclopedia of diving and stuff that I had to do on my my dive master training back in the day at Pro Dive, which Willie did that too, by the way. But a big, thick book. I was like, golly, this had to take 20 years to write this. And that's probably accurate, isn't it, Alex? Or what do you think?
Not quite 20, just about.
Close enough.
But once again, thank you for the lead in. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So you wrote for the latest issue, page 22, to feed or not to feed sharks. That is the question. Right on the heels of Shark Week. This is a pretty good topic. And obviously, I think it goes, a lot of people have opinions on this. So what are the pros and cons of shark feeds from your perspective? What do you think?
Let me start off by saying in my 72 plus years on this earth, there's never been a significant issue that I've found that is black and white. And this is one of them. Mm-hmm. This clearly is one of them. Shark diving takes place in over 80 countries of the world. There are more than 400 dive operators who are devoted exclusively to it, let alone those who have it as a secondary product. There are 520 species of sharks. Obviously, not all of those are reef sharks, but the point is that we are never going to get to a single one-size-fits-all answer on this issue because it varies according to not only location, but also in terms of the format. It varies in terms of species. So there are lots of questions that are still outstanding. And that's the point I try to make here, that there has been an increasing amount of research. And in fact, in the link to the article, I've listed 21 peer-reviewed articles on all aspects of shark diving, pro, con, and in the middle. So there is data emerging, but there is no data such that it can settle the issue. And I don't think there will ever be, because you can find data that says it's good in some circumstances and with some species, and it's not in others. The point is there are potential concerns, of course. People can and have been injured. There are concerns over the health of the sharks themselves. There are concerns over the impact on the ecology proximate to these feeds, et cetera. And all of those issues are being studied. And as I said, the results vary. And so if you're looking for definitive scientific backing for your opinion, you're not going to find it, because there's going to be something contrary to that, which is typical in science. So that's kind of the take home that I'm seeing here. In my view, well, first of all, we have to continue to do the science, but we also have to understand there's a philosophical aspect to this, because I have a very, very good friend who's a vehement environmentalist, and we agree on almost everything except shark diving. He opposes it vehemently, mainly on philosophical issues. And I have to say, if you feel it's a Disneyland experience and it's inauthentic, then that's fine. But I think there is ample rationale to do it. And that's really what I come down in the article. There is a significant, in my view, need to do this. Let me just give you a little bit of insight. There was a study published in Nature back in 2020. For 4 years, they deployed what were called chum cams. These are baited traps, essentially, that have a GoPro camera attached to it. And they looked at sharks over 4 years. And believe it or not, they monitored 15,000 hours of video. What they found that on 20% of coral reefs around the world, sharks were not present. They were functionally extinct. And they only found 3 sharks in over 800 hours in combination from the Dominican Republic, French West Indies, Kenya, Vietnam, the Windward Islands of the Dutch Antilles, and Qatar. So the point is, the only way that many people are ever going to see a shark is if you provide some incentive. Mm-hmm. And the way that they're incentivized, whether it's by food, hand feeding, chum sickle, whatever, that of course varies and requires study. So, the bottom line is it's an important issue. It's projected to be a $500 million industry in the next few years. And so we need to continue to be well aware of this and do it in a responsible way. And I think the most responsible thing we need to do involves education. There was another study done asking participants, what is the thing they wanted more out of the experience? And overwhelmingly, it was more education. They wanted to know more about these magnificent critters. And I think in some instances, that's where we're dropping the ball. We really have to have better programming for shark conservation and education, and really, really provide a high quality experience when people do take it upon themselves to do this. So if it meets these goals, I'm 100% in favor of this. If people are doing this just as some, macho adrenaline rush, they have no business doing this, and it shouldn't be done. So
absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah,
great perspective. Perspective.
And
Thank you,
we've talked about this issue so many times on Scuba Radio. It's ridiculous, and I'm right there with you, Alex. I mean, could it be better in certain situations on how they construct the shark feed and do the shark dives? Of course. It's always you want to improve it and make it more educational, like you said. But boy, when you put those divers right next to the sharks and they get up close and personal on a level they never thought possible, yeah, we've all seen it. It changes people's lives and perceptions of these animals. So there's an instructional element to shark diving that is hard to. It's not replicated by just watching Shark Week, that's for sure, or watching some video. It's just not the same. But
it's not replicated by going to an aquarium either.
Correct.
Because unfortunately, many aquaria just kind of they promote the Jaws myth by having these feeding frenzy, feed times where people walk away thinking, "Oh wow, I don't ever want to be in the water with a shark." Mm-hmm. So even many aquaria are not really doing justice to the educational component.
True. And if you have a personal, thing against it, to me, it's no different like people that are vegan and those that eat meat. Yeah. If you don't do it, okay, that's fine. But, it has its place in certain situations. But great stuff as always. Alex brings a wealth of, just research and expertise to that topic. So that's an article everyone should read. Thank you so much, Alex. All right. So next up, we have Dean Hollis. Now, I almost wonder if this is a sad thing because Dean's written an article about potentially wanting to sell your dive business. Who wouldn't? And God's green earth would want to do that.
Let me tee up a little bit here. Jessica Jarash and Dean Hollis are with us from Dive Ventures. And if you've been anywhere besides a cave in the last 10 years, you probably have seen this company buying up dive shops. And Dean, you guys are up to what, 18, 20 stores 18, now? Something like that. Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, the only, in my opinion, in the last 34 years, the only even remote company that's been like that was Sports Chalet in California, and they were not diving specific. So it's really remarkable what he's done. And I happen to know one of the stores he bought in Springfield, Missouri, Don Peterson. When I was a dive instructor in the county we lived in. I was the only instructor in the county, and that was the shop I worked with. And they were the greatest, coolest guys. And it's so neat that was one of their very first acquisitions. So I have a little history there, but I'm going to turn it over to them because he has a really good question, Greg, and you should ask him. And the question is,
if you're thinking about selling,
what is the biggest mistake owners make when they're thinking about selling their business? So take it away, Dean and Jessica.
Yeah. Let me start in a couple of things, and thanks, Greg, and thanks, William, and thanks you guys for letting Jessica and I hang out with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we always say the dive industry is a relationship business, and you can look at the screen and see that it is. And if you don't believe that, go to DEMA in 100 days, 110 days, and clearly it's a relationship business. And it's not a sad day; it's a happy day, or it should be a happy day. And I think these questions and what we tried to answer in the article will tell you it can be sad if you don't think about it.
Right.
If you think about it and plan for it, it can be one of the best days of your life. And Don Peterson, who is featured in the article, got a picture. He still teaches class, still leads trips, and he would tell you he's having more fun now than he has ever had in his life because he doesn't have to worry about running a business. He can just worry about taking people diving, which is why we all got into the business to start with.
Well, and it's kind of his legacy as well. So you're handing it off. You want to hand it off to somebody who's going to take it and make it bigger than what you started it with. And that's what you guys have really done with your network of stores, right?
That's exactly right. When you think about the legacy of dive shops, and most dive shop owners have been in it for years, decades, and in some cases, generations. In fact, we have a couple of those within our local dive shops, Doug McNeese, right? And Wyatt and Beverly Foster, and Chelsea's now running that for us. So when you think about the amount of energy and money and emotion that has gone into running a dive shop, and in some cases for generations, and then 20 to 30% of dive shops close every year, I mean, that's sad. But what's happy is what we're trying to do is keep those local dive shops alive, right? And give those people who have never thought about having a transition or an exit strategy something to do and something to do with their legacy. And our 100% commitment is honoring that legacy and taking it to the next level and just keeping their legacy alive and keeping the spirit of the local dive shops alive. So going back to your original question, what we try to do in our article is outline the 5 questions you ought to be asking and every dive shop owner ought to be asking. And the first is why? Why did you get into this business to start with, right? And then, why do you want to sell? Do you want to? Do you need to? Do you have to? If you have to, you're going to have kind of limited options, right? But if you want to, and if you want to see your legacy continue, that's that's a happy day. Then the second question is, what do you want to accomplish? You just want to get out, say, I'm burned out, I'm done, I can't handle another recession, get me out of here. Do you want to stick around? Do you want to take it to the next level? So that's the second question is, why you got into it? What do you want to do with it? And then who do you want to sell to? Or who can you sell to? You have a family, you have relatives, you have friends, you got somebody running your dive shop. Do they have the money? Do they have the resources? Do they have the capabilities? If you do, sell it to them. Because that's what's going to keep those customers in the store and engaged and diving. And that's what we all want. Then the next one is when. Do you say, I just got to get out. I got to get out today. Write me a check and I am adios. Or do you want to do it by the end of the year for tax reasons? Or do you say, no, I'm flexible. I don't have to get out, but I'd like to stick around. And that's Don Peterson. I think we bought him 12 years ago. He's still here. And Dwayne and Mary Gardner, they're still here. They're still loving it, leading trips. And so that's a win-win-win all the way around, right? They win. We win because we're still keeping their enthusiasm. And of course, the customer wins, and that's the most important thing. And the last question was, how? How involved do you want to be, right? And then how do you sell it? And stay tuned on our next article. Deanne Olson, our Chief Financial Officer, she's going to be in here on the next article, on the next Level Up, and talk about how you sell your dive business and how you can prepare for that. And in the meantime, I would just say if anybody has any questions, if there's anything we can do to help, we've talked to hundreds of dive shops. We have 18. And so we've talked to a lot of them. Some of them said it's not the right time. Doug McNeese and I talked for probably 12 years, right? Until the time was right. I've had several that said, you made me realize how valuable my business is to me. And so it just completely reframed their thought. So yeah, call us, reach out to us. We'd love to help. That's all we're driven by. We're passionate about one thing and one thing only, and that's getting this dive industry growing, keeping the customers happy, and just keep growing our industry.
Well, and you guys have done a great job, really have. I mean, they made a lot of waves.
They sure have. Now, at the end of his article on page 28, there's a QR code. You can just zap that QR code. If you're looking at the print version, it'll go directly to Dean's email. Or if you want on the digital version, you click it, it'll do the same thing. So they're easy to contact. Thank you guys for both of you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will get back to you. I promise. If I don't, I'm on a boat or on a dive trip somewhere.
Blame it on Jessica.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, does Jessica have anything she wants to throw into the mix? I mean, she's just sitting back, letting Dean do all the work.
That's right.
That might be a good move.
No, it's of course an emotional decision, and we get that. So as Dean said, we're happy to talk with you, and it's over many conversations and many moments of self-reflection for you and where you're at. But we're along for the ride and happy to start that conversation.
Well, like I said, I've talked to a lot of the dive shops that have done that, and it is their baby. They get into the industry, they have a dive shop for a bunch of years, and they don't want to see it go away when it's time for them to move on to something else or retire or whatever. And you guys have earned a great reputation for taking that legacy to the next level for these folks. And I've just heard rave reviews. So hats off to you. Good work. Keep it up for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
And Greg, I'm gonna queue up the next one.
Okay, go.
So we track our metrics very, very closely in this magazine, and I can tell you right now exactly how many people have viewed every single page, what they've done. And this next writer's article is tied for the #1 most read of this particular issue. It's a very, very, very relevant subject. So I'm going to let you queue up our next speaker.
Well, that would be Dan Orr. Who I've known for many, many years, and he knows everything when it comes to diving. He's the original Dan of Dan, if you ask me. Whether he doesn't like that, but I say it
literally.
Anyway. He's an expert. He's not just an old diver. He talks about it and the health, questions that go along with that. And he's given a lot of seminars over the years with that, and he's written an article, "The Older Diver and Health Questionnaire." So what's the best way a dive resort or operator can protect themselves while not, curbing older diver activities? Like I'm finding myself get into that category, Dan. But what can you tell us about that this time?
A lot of us are getting that category. In fact, I saw something the other day that said about 11,000 people each day are reaching the age of 65. That's between the years 2024 and 2027. So there are a lot of people in that category, and a lot of those people either are divers or want to be divers. So with the older population is indeed a great market. But as far as the questionnaires are concerned, like a lot of things we've been talking about, it's a very complicated, complex question, because the dive operator has to deal with their training organization. They have to deal with their insurer. They have to deal with their risk manager, if they have one. They have to deal with their attorneys, possibly. So it's a big issue. But what my suggestion is, and a suggestion in the article, was that part of that responsibility is the diver themselves, because we have to find out what the requirements are of the places we're going. So, for example, if I'm going on a dive trip, I'll talk to the person who organized the trip to find out if they're familiar with any requirements. And if they're not familiar, I'll contact the dive operator at my destination to find out if they have any requirements. And a lot of times you don't know. And if you're traveling a lot and all of a sudden you make a decision, hey, I want to go diving here, you may not know. So what I'll do is I carry a letter from my physician that I have redone each year when I have my annual physical that says that my physician says that I am fit to dive. Now, of course, it really is up to the operator when you get there as to whether or not they're going to accept that, because they may have unique requirements. And as I said in the article, I was doing a webinar actually, and somebody asked me about going to Silfra in Iceland. And they'd heard from a number of other people that the government of Iceland had said, if you're over 60, you can't dive there any longer, which, of course, I found out is nonsense because I contacted the dive operator myself. And, of course, everybody has to fill out a medical history questionnaire. And those people that are 60 and older have to have that signed by a physician. But it doesn't mean you can't dive in Iceland.
Yeah. And the insurance companies are making it tough on the operator sometimes a lot in that regard. But no age discrimination. We can still do this stuff.
Not at all.
Stop it. It's not that hard.
I just turned 77 this year, and I've got dives scheduled for the rest of this year and the next couple of years.
Well, there you go. I mean, I still dive, and everyone says I look great for a 75-year-old woman. But I don't know how to take that. But that's just me. But Dan, you're number one. How about that? Are you surprised?
Appreciate that. I'm a legend in my own mind.
No, you are not. You are a legend and totally legitimate, my friend.
Yeah.
It's
overnight sensation. He's an overnight sensation. Only took 45 years to make.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. There you go. Well, good stuff. Yeah, look that up in the July issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. All right, up next, we got Gil Zemer. And I think I said his name wrong again. Zemer?
Greg, an easy way to remember it is I was named after my father's two uncles. One was Gilbert Zemer and one was Albert Zemer. So my great uncle's name was Alzheimer. So it's
Alzheimer.
Very forgettable name, but easier for you to remember.
Well, see, I said both of them. So I figured, well, I'll cover both. All right. But Gil has written an article in the July issue, Top 10 Tips for Promoting Your Scuba Business. So what's the most important tip of all when promoting yourself as a dive retailer or resort there, Gil? What do you think?
Well, it's a good question. So for over 40 years, I worked as an advertising copywriter to pay for my dive trips. And one thing I learned from all that is you don't put all your marketing eggs into one basket. You should spread them out like different eggs in different baskets, like they were from free-range chickens, and let them do their thing. And each of these, so each email you send, and each postcard you send, each blog you write, each video you post, these are different touch points. And it takes 7 to 10 touch points for a prospect or a customer to act on whatever they see. When I worked in advertising, and I would do a multi-million-dollar campaign like for Bank of America, I would write a 60-second TV commercial, a 30-second TV commercial, a 60-second radio commercial, print ads, outdoor boards. And when this campaign broke for a couple of months and people would see the ads all over the place, these were all these different touch points. And each time they saw them, these were working as a critical mass together to get their attention. And so I'm going to put up this visual here, just a second here. Yeah. Okay. So if you can see this visual here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So the point is, whether you're promoting a dive trip or a gear sale or a new product announcement or a special discount at your DEMA booth, the more touch points you use, the higher your marketing response can be. And the website should be the hub for everything should point back to that. And another important tip, I'll take this away now. Another important tip is when you send emails to your customers, 2 things about emails. 1, make the subject lines creative. And 2, keep the email short. People don't want to read War and Peace in an email. They want to read the Cliff Notes. And so as I wrote in my article, have fun with your subject lines. Some of them I had in the article was, if you're promoting a famous Grand Cayman snorkeling site, use the subject line, ever been kissed by a stingray? Pucker up. or for a coral triangle dive trip, the subject line could be, you'll run out of adjectives on dive 2 for your logbook.
Right.
Or when you're selling gear, use suit yourself, wet or dry. And the one I like the best is for a menacing shark image or a video, the subject line could be open wide and say oi.
Nice. That's for our Australia friends, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good mate.
So when everything works together and your marketing matrix is attaining critical mass, it means more sales, more money, and more happiness on your end and your customers' end.
I thought one of the most interesting things from your article, Gil, was the discussion point of video in your social media, and that videos are 1,200% more likely to be shared on social media than a link or text combined. So very, very powerful. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and what a video's worth 1,000,000, something like that.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
And more is better, diversifying your marketing outreach for your website and stuff through all those different channels. You can never do too many. Or just you don't put all your promotional eggs in one basket, I think is kind of what you're saying there. But good stuff as always, Gil. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And Next up, and I believe this is the last one. This is going to be our final hitter. Is that right there, Willie? Okay, so Jeff Sincerapino with us.
There you go.
How about that? I actually said his name correctly for once. I had to make up for the mistake with Gil. I apologize, Gil, once again.
And Jeff, I loved your article. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
If you haven't read it, you got to read it because he's talking about some very heady stuff in our industry, but very important stuff when it comes to, or we had a tipping point basically in the industry from a retail perspective. So I'll let you take it away there.
Yeah. What is it? The inflection point in the dive industry. What do you mean by that exactly, Jeff?
Well, inflection points are kind of interesting from a business perspective. I read a couple of books this year. One was on Blockbuster Video, and the other was on BlackBerry. And there were things that were happening in those industries that they could see with the data and information, and they didn't react to them. And now we don't have any more Blockbusters, and we don't have any more BlackBerries. So one of the things that we do have is information on open water diver certifications. And we get that information from DEMA quite regularly, and we see the trend. The trend has been downward since 2017, every quarter. A little bit of a blip up after the pandemic. And then the other thing that I think is an important data point, and this goes back to a lot of the work that Willie has been doing on how big is the dive industry and the number of dive shops that are out there. I know when I started, a number of years ago, there were at least 10 dive shops in our state of Connecticut. Right now, I think we're down to 5. And that's in the course of about a 15 to 20 year period. So what does that mean for the industry? Do we want those numbers to go back up? Yes, I think we do. We all agree. We want them to go back up, get more divers into the sport and out there diving, especially as we start to age out and not dive anymore. But what are some of the solutions for this? Well, I think there's one thing we've got to break down some of the barriers that are keeping people away from diving. And the first one is with young people coming into the sport. The sport's expensive. It's expensive to get certified. We all know there used to be the $199 or $99 all-in course for the tuition, and then we'd hope to make up all the money on the back end with the equipment sales. Well, that model doesn't really work anymore. We have to charge for the training up front, and it's expensive. So are there solutions that we can come up with that start to break down some of the barriers of expense for young people? I see it at the shop. Parents come in with their kids, and it's a struggle for them to get their kids into the sport, especially if it's a family of 2 or 3 or 4. And then conversely with that is the availability of dive shops. If we're creating dive shop deserts, like we have food deserts out there, how far will people travel to get their open water certification? We had 2 sisters come to our shop to take the class from us that drove 1 hour and 10 minutes because we were the closest shop to them. Okay. How many people won't make that trek of 1 hour and 10 minutes to get certified? Is there a solution? Maybe we have to get maybe we get independent instructors out there in these locations to be able to deliver that training. It's expensive for an independent instructor, but can the industry come together and say, you don't really need to be a dive shop if you can get out there, be affiliated with a shop, but be out there in these deserts where there aren't any dive shops and teaching. And the final piece of that, which really causes us problems, we struggle with pool access, affordable, available pool time. And again, that's a struggle for a lot of shops, a lot of independent instructors. So how can we address those issues as an industry to get diving into these aquatic centers and at a reasonable price so that we can teach scuba? So new diver certifications are certainly a key element. And I believe we can watch the data go down all we want, but I think we want to see it go back up. And we got to get to that. And there's a lot of people in the industry talking about this, but I think it's time to act.
I agree with that. Totally. The pool issue. I mean, I know in Orlando we have that problem, especially, I kind of act as an independent instructor, and just having a pool access in my general vicinity is always a challenge. That's where it gets back into the liability and the insurance. The pools don't like to work with you sometimes. And then you have to affiliate with a dive shop, but guess what? Yeah, there's not a dive shop that close to where you're trying to operate. So we got to address some of these issues. And I think it's definitely a good thought-provoking article that he's written for the July issue. And
Greg, this goes really nicely with what I wrote from the publisher this month, which is the power of working together. And it's specifically addressing industry cohesion and how essential it is for so many different factors that need to work together and entities and elements to be on the same page. So, Jeff, you're spot on. And I'm going to give you a little commercial for our July issue because Jeff has submitted actually 2 articles. They're both outstanding. But one of them we've been waiting to run, and it's how to deal with antiquated dive equipment. And I got a call. I was talking to Rich Thomas from International Scuba here in Dallas a couple of weeks ago. He told me about this guys that had come in with 3 or 4 different sets of gear, and they wanted to get them serviced, and they driven down from Oklahoma, and they went to all the different garage sales they could find in Facebook and bought all this dive gear, thinking they were finally going to get their own gear, and they couldn't service any of it because their service kits weren't available or anything. So, Jeff, your article is going to really resonate with retailers all across the country. He told me, he said that his equipment sales has been off. His training's been through the roof, but his equipment sales hasn't been as strong as he had expected. And he said so, and he mentioned specifically people coming in with old gear. So I look forward to that article next month.
That's really hard one. It's a hard one.
Well, you got to start with discussing it first, and then you come up with the solutions.
Yep.
Absolutely. Good stuff, Jeff. Well, look, we'll look forward to that in the August issue. But once again, we've kind of recapped some of the stuff or dived a little deeper into the July issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. And we got to thank everybody for participating today and for tuning in. We appreciate it. And Willie, got any final thoughts before we wrap it up? What do you think?
I do. And thank you again for everybody being here. And for those that couldn't make it, some of our writers are just in other parts of the world. It was difficult. August issue is going to be so amazing. We've got an author working on, there's a whole new trend out of South Korea where they have these country clubs that are for diving. And it's all inland, it's all freshwater. It's fabulous. And I've heard all about it, and I can't wait to get the article. And it's really a whole cultural phenomena there, and it's something that could so easily be brought to the United States. We have another industry titan that's writing on, do liability releases help you or hurt you, or what is the real story there? And of course, Jeff's, and then we can't wait for part 2 of Dean and Jessica's article. They're going to be supplying from your CFO. What was her name again, Dean?
Yeah, who was that, Dean?
Ian Olson.
That's it. Yes, and we're looking forward to that. So, all the rest of the writers, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Anybody have any closing comments they'd like to say very quickly?
I see no hands. Britton,
thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Absolutely. We're getting the thumbs up from Britton and a couple of the others. So I guess we'll just wrap it up for that. I am Greg the Dive Master from Scuba Radio. Check it out, ScubaRadio.com, and tune in every week, Saturdays, 3 to 5 Eastern time. We'd love to have you. But that's going to do it for the Level Up podcast today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Check out Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, and we'll catch up with you next time.
This has been Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Produced by Scuba Radio and the Cline Group. For more info, go to ScubaDivingIndustry.com.